Hi, it's your favorite person, Muskan. Most of you probably know me as the zombie, murder victim, lab rat, and the gracious rival of Steven and Andrea. For now, I'm also the one who does all the drawings you see for the channel. Since we were on a hiatus to catch up on all the behind-the-scenes work, I decided to make some use of my time and record my art process for the channel. Right now, I'm coloring the new SKRAM profile picture. All the programs and supplies I use will be listed in the description. I didn't record the sketching or inking process because I didn't know if I should make it into a video or not, so I apologize for that. There was also a giant pain that took hours, so that might just be for the best. I'll cover that process another time. For now, I'm coloring the skin. I always do the skin for everyone in a separate layer from the rest simply because I can add a lot more detail with it. I have a reference image open above the layers. It isn't that visible on the screen, but I use it as a color picker for everyone. First, I lay down the base skin color and then start adding blush and reds where there usually is on a person. On the cheeks, nose area, ears, and around the eyes, for example. Just to note, my laptop shows a lower saturation for the image while I'm working, so that's why some of the colors are really bright and highly saturated, and it's kind of an eyesore. I usually fix that at the end once I'm done with everything. Back to the drawing, I also darken up the contours around the face just to give it a lot more dimension despite the cartoonish style. I color the hair, mouths, and eyes after all that is done since they don't require that much shading or blending. With the clothes, I start out, once again, with the base layer. Adding a base layer and then just using clipping mask over it makes the coloring so much easier because you can add the details without worry about going over the lines or messing up the rest of the coloring. I use a color picker from a previous drawing in order to get accurate colors for the outfits. References are always your best friend while drawing. I realized though that the colors were a bit too cool toned, and since this drawing was planned to be a warmer tone, I just used some yellow and pink overlays along with a color adjuster to fix it. Having one color overlay helps give your drawing a cohesive tone and palette. It's pleasing to the eye, yet still allows for contrast if you do it correctly. Adding gradients also allow for more dimension so your drawing looks more lifelike. After that, I added the shading. I planned for the light source to be behind the character, so that meant that most of the drawing would be in a shadow. Personally, this is my favorite type of lighting because you could add some good and cool room lighting to it. It makes it look more dynamic, but it requires a couple of shading layers, otherwise the shadow can look one-dimensional and kind of flat, so it needs some technique to it. I do that later in the video where I go back and add some darker shadows on the characters where there normally would be if I didn't have the harsh downlight. Using airbrush-like tools helps soften the shadows so that they aren't too harsh and are nice to the eye. With the lighting, there wasn't much I needed to do. It was mostly just warm tone gradients, yellows, oranges, reds, pinks. I just used a circular gradients because the light source was coming from the center of the image, and I then added some onto the negative space around the character so that it resembled a glow coming from the sun. I also changed the line art color. It's very rare that black line art can work as a line art color, so I usually go towards purples and reds because they give the drawing a softer edge in my opinion. I added a bit of light on the character's hairs because it seemed a bit flat to me, so I tried using different brush strokes to resemble different hair types. I used more long and sharp lines for Ronnie and I due to our straighter hair, while I used short and curved lines for Steven and Andrea to resemble their curly hair. It was just some extra detailing that really added more to the image. For Katrina, I just sort of created a glow around the circle because of the censored face we have there. I failed to mention the background, but all I did was add a few clouds going in a circle around using an airbrush to resemble a sky. I used a lot of bright gradients to resemble a sun, and to make sure the image does not get washed out, I added some darker overlays over the entire image, including the characters. Here's what I did for the rest of the darker shading in order to give it more dimension because it seemed a bit flat. I just went back and added some darker tones where there should have been. Finally, I added a bit of a blur to the entire image just to soften it up a bit, along with some final color adjustments, such as finally fixing the saturations. After that, the final image was done.